My husband's father insisted we name our baby after him. When I chose a different name, he exploded, "You have no say in this." My husband shrugged, "It's just a name." Smiling, I nodded and signed the birth certificate with a name that left his father screaming. My husband, Alex, and I had been trying for a baby for a while, so when I finally saw those two pink lines, we were overjoyed. We called our families, sent out cute little announcements, and started planning. And then Richard, Alex's father, decided it was his baby. Now, I've always had issues with Richard. He's the kind of man who believes respect is a one-way street. He talks down to waitstaff, makes backhanded comments about people's appearances, and thinks every decision in the family should go through him. I tolerated him because he was my husband's father, but I never liked him. And I knew, the second we told him about the pregnancy, that he would be overbearing. But I underestimated just how bad it would get. We had barely finished saying, "We're having a baby," when Richard clapped his hands and said, "Great. If it's a boy, his name will be Richard." Not a question. Not a discussion. Just a statement, as if it was a done deal. I laughed, thinking he was joking. He wasn't. "If it's a girl, Rochelle," he continued. I glanced at Alex, waiting for him to say something. He just shrugged and gave me a look, the one that said, "Just go with it." I didn't go with it. "I don't think we've decided on names yet," I said carefully. Richard just smiled like I was some clueless little girl. "Oh, there's nothing to decide. It's tradition." No, it wasn't. I'd done my research. No one in his family was named Richard before him. His own father had a completely different name. His grandfather, too. But that didn't matter to him. What mattered was control. From that moment on, every conversation about the baby turned into a conversation about the name. At family gatherings, he'd loudly refer to my stomach as Little Ricky. He'd tell people, "We've already got the name picked out." He even bought a onesie that said, "Grandpa's Little Richard" on it. Every time, I corrected him. Every time, he ignored me. I tried talking to Alex about it. "This is getting out of hand," I said one night. "It's just a name, babe," he said, rubbing my shoulder like that would make it better. "But it's our baby," I argued. "Not his." "I know," Alex said. "But is it really worth fighting over?" Yes. Yes, it was. And it wasn't just the name anymore. It was the principle. Richard refused to acknowledge me as an equal partner in this. To him, I was just the vessel carrying his grandchild. My opinions, my feelings? They didn't matter. At one point, he even had the audacity to say, "Mothers don't get a say in family names. It's up to the men." I stared at him, trying to process the absolute insanity of what he had just said. Alex, bless his spineless heart, tried to laugh it off. "Come on, Dad, you're being dramatic." Richard just smirked. "You'll see. When the time comes, she won't have a choice." That was the moment I made my decision. I didn't just want to choose my own baby's name, I wanted to win. I started keeping track of everything Richard said. Every time he dismissed me. Every time he acted like my opinion didn't matter. Every time he spoke about my baby like I was just an incubator. And then, things escalated. Richard started telling people, my friends and family, that the baby was already named. He told my mother. He told my best friend. He even told my coworkers when I ran into him at a grocery store near my office. "Little Ricky is on the way," he'd say, clapping people on the back like he'd just won a prize. I was livid. But the worst part? Alex still wouldn't take it seriously. "I mean, is it really that big of a deal?" he asked when I confronted him again. "Yes, Alex. It is. He's naming our baby without us. Without me." Alex sighed, rubbing his face. "I just don't want to fight with him." That was the problem. Alex never wanted to fight with his father. Ever. Richard had spent his whole life making sure his son never stood up to him. He had raised Alex to be agreeable. To say, "Yes, Dad," and go along with things, even when he didn't want to. And that worked fine for their family dynamic. But I wasn't raised that way. And I sure as hell wasn't raising my child that way either. So, I stopped arguing. Richard thought he had won. He kept making smug little comments, treating me like I had finally come around. He even started referring to himself as Big Rick and my unborn child as Little Ricky, like they were some kind of disgusting grandfather-grandson duo. I let him believe it. And then, 2 months before my due date, Richard did something that changed everything. He tried to bribe me. I was at my baby shower, which my mother had planned beautifully. It was supposed to be a happy day. Pink and blue decorations. Cupcakes. Games. Laughter. And then, Richard pulled me aside. "I have a little gift for you," he said, handing me an envelope. Inside was a check. A very large check. $5,000. I stared at it, confused. "What is this?" "Just a little something to help out with the baby," Richard said smoothly. "All you have to do is make sure his name is Richard." I nearly choked. He actually tried to pay me off. I folded the check and placed it back in the envelope. Then, very calmly, I handed it back to him. I'm not selling my baby's name. Richard's whole face twisted in anger. Rebecca, don't be difficult. I smiled. You don't have a say in this. His eyes darkened. I turned and walked away. That was the last straw for him. After that, Richard went full-blown crazy. He started calling Alex at all hours, demanding updates on his grandson. He started making nasty little comments about me at family gatherings, things like, she's got an attitude problem, and women these days don't know their place. But the real kicker? He went behind my back and tried to get Alex to sign the birth certificate at the hospital before I could. That's when I knew this wasn't just about a name. This was a war. And I was going to win. At this point, I knew Richard was obsessed, but I had no idea just how far he was willing to go. 2 weeks before my due date, my mother called me, her voice tight with concern. Rebecca, I ran into Richard today. My stomach twisted. And? He was at the courthouse, she said. Filing paperwork for something. I nearly dropped my phone. I knew what he was doing before she even said it. He was trying to petition for grandparents' rights. For those who don't know, in some states, grandparents can file for visitation rights, sometimes even partial custody, if they can prove they have a strong relationship with the child. And Richard, in all his delusional glory, thought he could get ahead of the game. I sat down, hands shaking. He thinks he's going to force his way into my baby's life. And worse, he was already preparing for a legal battle. I told Alex. He sighed, rubbing his temples. I'll talk to him. But talking wasn't going to do anything. Richard didn't talk. He demanded. And sure enough, when Alex confronted him, Richard just doubled down. You're my son. That's my grandson. And no woman is going to take that from me, he snapped. You don't even have to worry about it, Alex. I'll make sure everything is taken care of. Taken care of? I felt sick. It was bad enough that he was trying to name my baby. Now, he was acting like he had ownership over him before he was even born. But here's the part that really sent me over the edge. A few days later, I got a call from the hospital where I was set to deliver. Mrs. Parker, the receptionist said. I just wanted to confirm that your husband's father has permission to be present in the delivery room. I nearly screamed. What? No, he absolutely does not have permission. The receptionist hesitated. Oh, well, he called earlier. He said he was your husband and insisted he be added to the list. He pretended to be Alex. I hung up and called my husband immediately. Your father is trying to sneak into the delivery room. To his credit, Alex finally looked pissed. That's it, he muttered. I'm done. He called Richard and actually stood up to him for the first time in his life. Dad, back off, Alex snapped. You're not coming to the hospital. You're not picking the name. You're not in charge here. Richard, of course, lost it. You're letting her control you, he screamed. You're a disgrace. I should have raised you to be a man. Alex hung up on him. And just like that, we finally cut him off. Blocked his number. Stopped responding to family messages. Locked down the hospital guest list. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. Because Richard wasn't finished yet. And his next move? It was worse than anything he had done before. For a few days, things were quiet. Too quiet. I should have known that Richard wasn't the kind of man to let something go. He wasn't just obsessed, he was desperate. And desperate people do dangerous things. It happened 3 days before my scheduled induction. I had been feeling off all day, exhausted, cramping, just generally uncomfortable. I told Alex I wanted to rest, so I went to bed early. I woke up to my mother banging on my apartment door at 2 a.m. Rebecca, open up. Her voice was sharp with panic. I stumbled out of bed, confused and groggy. When I opened the door, she shoved her phone in my face. It was a screenshot. A legal notice. Richard had filed for an emergency court order to claim temporary guardianship of my unborn child. I felt the world tilt under me. No, this isn't real. But it was. Richard had somehow convinced a judge that Alex and I were unfit parents. He had made up a whole case, citing emotional instability and conflict in the home as reasons why my child needed to be placed under his care the moment he was born. I grabbed my stomach, nausea crashing over me in waves. I couldn't believe it. This man had actually tried to steal my baby before he was even born. Alex, half awake, read the document and went pale. I didn't think he'd go this far. I snapped. You didn't think? You didn't think. I told you. I told you he was obsessed. I told you he was controlling. I told you he didn't see me as a person. And you let it happen. Alex flinched. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Because there was nothing to say. This was his fault. He let Richard push, and now the man was trying to legally take our child. My mother pulled me into a hug, whispering, "It's going to be okay. We'll fix this." But I wasn't so sure. Because Richard had money. He had influence. And, most importantly, he had no conscience. The next morning, we went straight to a lawyer. The good news? The emergency order hadn't been approved yet. It was still under review. But if Richard had already gotten this far, I knew he wouldn't stop. So I made a decision. I moved my induction date up. That night, I checked into the hospital under a different name. Only my mother and Alex knew. No one else. I had my baby in complete secrecy. When my son, my beautiful baby boy, was finally placed in my arms, I burst into tears. I was exhausted, drained, but victorious. And then, I made sure Richard would never touch him. We were discharged 2 days later. The second we got home, Richard was there. He was standing outside our apartment, arms crossed, waiting. I didn't even hesitate. I turned around and told Alex, "Get him out of here." But Alex just froze. Richard saw it. He saw the hesitation. And like a predator smelling weakness, he went in for the kill. "She tricked you, son," Richard said, his voice low and smooth. "She turned you against your own father. She's selfish. She's disrespectful. You can't let her control you like this." I felt something inside me snap. I stepped forward, holding my baby close. "You are the only selfish one here." Richard turned his glare on me. "You're just mad because I won." I laughed. Actually laughed, because the man was delusional. "You didn't win," I said. "You lost everything." Then I dropped the final bombshell. I added a restraining order to the court case. "You are legally barred from seeing my child. You can't come near him. You can't call us. You can't even ask about him." Richard's face turned red. "You wouldn't." I did. I pulled out my phone and opened the email from my lawyer, showing the official notice. "You came here to fight for control, but guess what? You have none." Richard screamed. A full-grown man, throwing a tantrum in the middle of the street. He cursed, he kicked at the pavement, he ranted about how ungrateful Alex was, how I was a manipulative little. I shut the door in his face. And just like that, it was over. Richard tried to fight the restraining order, but the judge laughed him out of court. He was officially cut off. Alex struggled with it at first. He had spent his entire life living in his father's shadow, always trying to please him. But after seeing how sick his father truly was, he finally understood. "I should have stopped him sooner," he admitted one night. "I should have protected you." I didn't say, "I told you so." I just let him hold our son and whisper, "I won't let anyone take you away from us." As for Richard, he lost everything: his power, his control, his legacy. The last thing I ever heard about him? He had a new grandson. From Alex's brother. And guess what? They didn't name him Richard either.